at the high school level or the junior high level. And you didn't, most kids were two-sport athletes at that point. I think that today, with as much specialization as we have, even on down as far as the junior high level, where kids are encouraged to specialize in one sport, and I think that has diluted the pool of decent athletes for track and field. Track and field is not going to be real high on a lot of kids' totem poles as far as a sport to pick. They get into it by default. That finally dawns on them that they're not going to make the starting 5 or the starting 11 or whatever, and so they move to track and field as a secondary backup plan. And I think that there in the 70s and 80s we had a really good pool of athletes to draw from. If you look at the state championship track meet, gold medal winner and class winners, those are pretty good marks right now. But the depth and quality depth in track and field is poorer than it was in the 70s. You could get kids that, we wouldn't even look at a kid that wasn't 50 flat quarter miler. Hey, 50 flat quarter mile in a state meet, you're winning the state championship today in many classes. And I think the kids themselves had a more realistic understanding of what it took to be successful at the college level than kids are today. And that's not the athlete's fault, but they're conditioned to a point where they're thinking a particular performance is college level performance, and they're not very realistic as far as that's concerned. I was just reading today where some kid that signed with the University of Nebraska. Now this is the Big Ten, and this guy is like 11th in the state cross country meet and 4th or 5th in the state Class A meet. Ain't gonna make it at the college level, at that level, at the Big Ten level. Not going to be competitive. But people have become, I think, a little unrealistic in what is a competitive mark and what isn't, and what level, where do they fit in this whole scheme of, Division I to NAIA, whatever, and what it takes to be successful, at our level and the other levels. That realism, I think, has been lost. I really do. We have males, 5-minute milers, wanting a scholarship. 5-minute mile isn't that's not a good woman's performance, much less a men's. And so you have some people who have unrealistic ideas as to what's really competitive at the collegiate level. And part of that is in the relationship of athletics recruiting and general student recruitment, and the movement, I think, on the part of many colleges, and Doane is one of them, to utilize athletics recruiting as a major, to provide a major number of students just to put people in the seats of the college and not thinking about their quality of performance in a given sport. I think that we were much more concerned in the 70s and 80s with quality of performance when we recruited kids. Now they're much more concerned with getting their quotas in recruitment, and I think that has, in my opinion, that simply increases mediocrity in your program. You can't have a high-quality program with high-quality performances with that kind of an attitude to just get numbers. And I think it has diluted the quality of our athletic programs. I really do. It's in direct opposition to what we always in the past had thought of as our role. Our role was to produce the best possible performers that we could, and not be terribly concerned with how many of them. Now, certainly you have to have enough to cover the numerical demands of a particular sport. And that varies, of course, from sport to sport. That was one of the advantages I always thought that Erickson had in basketball. With only 5 guys on the court at one time, he didn't have to have 100 kids out for basketball. In fact, he preferred to have a small team. And but a very high quality team. And I think we've gotten away from that idea, at least at this level, at this, whatever level we're known as at. We've gotten away from the idea that we're going to try and provide the best athlete that we can and for our programs. And really get after the high quality performance down the line. Now, I still think that today, from what I see anyhow, in many of our events, the number one guy is pretty good. You got Cale Woken. He would be good in any era that we've had. When you jump, 24 feet or 25 or whatever he's jumped, and that kind of thing, and Tatum and some of those kinds of people would be good at any era, and but the quality depth that we have some depth, but we don't have very much quality depth, and I think the reason we don't have it is this idea of having recruiting quotas and numerical, a pure base number that we have to recruit every year. I think that's detrimental to the quality of our athletic program and here. And that's my opinion. I don't necessarily mean it's true, but it's what I believe. And some of the recruiting is just dumb luck. Really, I mean, I'm pure and simple. We got in '74, we picked up 3 transfers within a week that all wound up. 2 of them wound up being national champions. All of them wound up being All-Americans. We're talking about showing the flag and going to high schools, and even if they weren't Rick Cotton was a pole vaulter for Gearing High School. And Rick was, tried to recruit him. And I drove out to Gearing 2 or 3 times. Well, we didn't get him. And he went to Texas El Paso. And he didn't like it, just hated it. I don't know this. Of course, we don't know what's going on. Texas, I've forgotten all about him, to be honest with you, out of sight, out of mind. And one day I get a telephone call, and the coach at Gearing High School, he said, hey, you tried to recruit Cotton. And I said, yeah, when he was a senior. And I said, yeah. He said, I just saw him on the street. And I said, well, how's he doing? He said, he just hates Texas El Paso, and he's not going back. And if you get out here, I think you could recruit him again. I said, I'll be there tomorrow. I jumped in the damn car, drove out there. This is really an inefficient way for a coach to work. But I spent a whole day driving out there, and I got a hold of Cotton, took him to dinner that night, and told him that we would be glad to have him, and we would be able to help him financially and scholarship-wise. Sold him right there on it. He was looking for a place to go with a less of a pressure atmosphere, more of a team atmosphere, and I talked him into coming, and he went on and won 2 national championships for us, and his indoor record still stands from 1978, whenever that was. No more than a week later, I get a telephone call from the coach at McPherson College, a guy named Art Ray, and Art and I had known each other we had competed against each other for a while. And he said, I'm moving on to out of coaching. I'm going into whatever banking business or something. And he said, we got a pretty good half-miler down here named Fred Wilson. And he's an All-American, NAIA All-American 800-meter runner. And he said he doesn't want to stay because they aren't going to name another coach for whatever period of time. And he said he's looking, and I said we'd be happy to have him. He said I'll bring him down. He brings him down. Kid's here one day, sign him, and it's a done deal. Within a week of that, I'm walking into the admissions office. And one of the admissions gals says, hey, coach, she said, I got a guy here that says he's a pretty good cross-country runner. And I said, oh, yeah? And I walked back there, and here's a kid named Keith Driftmeyer, who was a student that ran for Midland College. And had got crossways with whoever the coach was at that time. McMahon, I suppose. And he said, I'm looking to move, and he said, I know you guys put on a pretty good program, and he said, your kids, I've visited with your athletes, and he said, they seem to be my kind of guys, and so we talked about it for a while, and he decided to come. And he, even though he had to sit out a year because of the conference school, but I've never had a 3-week period like that where I just fell into 2 national champions, and Wilson won the NCAA Division III championship, and Cotton won both the NAIA and the Division III. And Driftmeyer was still is on a distance medley relay school record team. I got, I think, second in national meet. In '78. Those, you don't have very many years like that, but you do occasionally fall into something, you know, and dumb luck is always a good thing for you. I always, I'd rather be lucky than good, I guess. The point, I guess, all of it is that it was a lot more. In the old days, it wasn't a very efficient way to do things, but it was effective from the standpoint that you got to know the athlete personally before you made any real commitment one way or the other. Either they made a commitment or you made a commitment. You got, I think, a little bit better handle on the people because you were face to face with them, and it's pretty hard. It's a lot easier to ignore a text, but if I'm sitting there facing you, you can't hardly ignore me. You know, you got to respond, and so from that standpoint, I think it was pretty good. Although not efficient, because, you know, you'd spend a whole day maybe and talk to one kid out on the road traveling someplace. And now you might stop at 5 schools and see one kid, but you always made the point of going to the coach, talking to him, getting, you know, if he has a meet results or something, getting some kind of interaction between the two of you, so that they know you and they know you're tuned in on track and field. I think it was really important for our program, for high school coaches to understand that we were really passionate about track and field here. That it wasn't just a thing to take up the space between basketball and the end of school, and that was really. We were really working at it and interested in people performing at a fairly high level. We had some pretty good kids in those days. I think that the drop in the quality pool of high school athletes has hurt track and field big time, nationwide. I don't think it's not a unique problem here. I think this is a nationwide program where kids who are volleyball players. We used to get, half our volleyball team would be running track and field, and you just don't see that anymore. And that we weren't alone. I mean, this is not a unique situation for Doane. This is a situation that transpired and transpires all over. I've talked to coaches fairly frequently, and they're all saying the same thing. You know, they're just not the pool of athletes out there because they just didn't get involved in track and field. And I know my son coaches in Minneapolis, and he coaches the distance kids. And you know, the distance runners are probably the poorest athletes in track and field. Half of them can't walk and chew gum at the same time. But and he's even saying, hey, you know, we're losing kids that want to play club soccer because it's going to help their performance to get a scholarship or whatever, and the chances of them getting aid at the college level. So this specialization in one sport at an early age, I think, is a worst thing that could possibly happen to athletics, because there's only so many slots out there, and if a kid is discouraged early, and then the chance of him dropping out of athletics altogether is much better. And so I think from that standpoint, it was better in the 70s and 80s for both the college and for the athlete, where he or she would play 2 or 3 sports and enjoy them, and then and become a better athlete in general, and we would then profit from that by being able to recruit, decent athletes.